How's everyone feeling? Yeah, good, good. So, I'm Jessica again. I didn't share earlier why this event is so meaningful to me, why it's so special, because of course it's great to create an event and have people come at the Barbican. Yeah, that's lovely, but that's just the thing. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context before I invite our wonderful panel to the stage. So today, 24th of June, I didn't actually realize this until a couple of weeks ago. But it just so happens, with that magic that is life and the synchronicities that we can't explain, that 6 years ago to this day, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was sitting upstairs, and some of you will know this if you've read my book. I was sitting upstairs in the spare bedroom of the house that I grew up in, and my dad was downstairs. He'd been terminally ill with cancer for a while and was in this kind of induced coma. And then we had this kind of nighttime vigil, candlelight, and I picked up a pen, and I was in this space of complete presence, which is so unusual. I think if you've had an experience like this, you'll probably relate. And for those of you that haven't, I guess the pandemic in many ways was the closest thing to it, because we were forced out of our incessant doing, almost collectively sent to our rooms to think about our behavior, confronted with life, because, and we had a choice to numb through all the ways that we can, or to ask ourselves some really pertinent questions about what we're doing with our lives and what we really want. And suddenly connection became more important than it's ever been, right? That's what kept us going. I had my Zoom 40th birthday party, and my bestie arranged Zoom games nights, and those things were our salvation, as well as the practice that many of us have developed, whatever it might be, journaling, yoga, running, that walk to the park where you'd see the same people walking round and round. But within that space at that time, 6 years ago, to this day, I picked up a pen, and I'd really been broken open by grief. And this stream of consciousness hit the back of an envelope, and at that point, I was not thinking about a book. Suffice to say, my dad and I were very, very close. We'd had quite the journey, but we'd arrived at a place where he was really my person, my rock. And I was coming to terms with who I would be without his presence in my life, when he had been the constant. And when I read this stream of consciousness that came flowing through me without any thought, it was the most beautiful, purest thing that I'd ever produced. And it came from a place of completely no agenda. I wasn't thinking about writing a book. I wasn't thinking about it being cathartic. And that piece of writing evolved into my book, Purpose. And if it wasn't for the book, which went on to completely change my life, that process, because for me, sometimes the word purpose is so loaded, it can feel so heavy, and I'm looking at the young people, it can feel like, oh my God, I don't know what my purpose is, and like there's this big thing that we're here to do in this world, and if we don't know what that thing is, we can feel completely discombobulated and uncertain, and actually, what I've come to believe and know for true for me is that purpose has nothing to do with doing. Actually, our only purpose is just to become more of who we already are. Stripped back is where we meet ourselves. Stripped back is where we meet ourselves. You see those words in the foyer. And stripped back from the masks that we wear, stripped back from all of the things. I love that line in the Surrender piece that Malik and Tyrone Isaac Stewart did this evening, which was, we're like, ducks dodging fireworks, I think it was, And so this evening, what I would really love to do through the panel is just get into conversation around some of the fireworks, some of the things that keep us walled from the truest, most authentic us. Because what I know to be true is that when we, if we will lean into how difficult things like grief can be, the most painful things that occur in our life, all of the rewards lie in that space. this opportunity to come to know ourselves and really see ourselves. This panel is called When We See Us. You know, that's where we arrive at a space where we're truly in our power. And from that space, we will know what to do. But the being comes first. So without further ado, Charlene can't be here tonight, unfortunately. That little subject of the world news, but she sends her apologies. So first of all, I'd like to invite Io Akinwolere to the stage. Io, anywhere you like, just grab a mic. Io has 14 years in broadcasting and award-winning factual and sports broadcaster, and you may well remember him as the very first black male presenter of Blue Peter.
Cash, thank you.
And he's also co-founder of Milk First Productions, which we may well hear a bit about, production company. Brain freeze. Akuya. Akuya Gyamfi. Anyway, you like. Akuya has 20 years in entertainment, and the British Blacklist is this online platform which really celebrates and spotlights creative talent from across, whether it's literature or from stage to screen. And it's also a portal for connecting brands with creative talent. And last but by no means least, Marvin Harrison. So Marvin's story, you know, a little bit like when I learned how dope black men came to be, it reminded me very much of my journey with purpose, that space of no agenda. Because it was 2018 when he sent a WhatsApp message to 23 of his friends who were also black fathers on Father's Day, just saying Happy Father's Day. Today, how many years on is that? 4 years on, it is an internationally renowned community of 40,000 men. He's also the author of Dope Black Dads. Did I say men before? Dope Black Men Who Are Dads. Another clap for Melvin. So I started by, that first part of the evening was broken up, you'll have noticed, into 3 sections: surrender, leap, and purpose, taken from the book. My journey, but I think many of our journeys. And so for me, that moment of surrender came through grief. You know, up until that point, I'd been this constant workaholic, addicted to doing, completely defined by my career. That was the antidote to my shame. I'd been a teen mum and I was carrying so much, and I realized that the more I achieved, the better I was responded to in society and the better I felt about myself. Something was numbed, a pain that I wasn't quite ready to be with and feel and heal. And so that was my moment of surrender. But I would love to talk to you guys and find out, you know, where was the moment that you were confronted with yourself and perhaps nudged into the space of surrender. I'm going to start with you, Marvin.
Thank you. It's such a big question. So
they're all going to be big tonight.
No,
We're going deep, people.
Going deep.
I'm with you. There's been a couple of moments that have been really clear to me where something isn't right here. That's the statement that is said when you make an adjustment or you start to change the way that you live your life. And so it happens periodically. Like, I'm somebody that really attacks life. Like, I probably do way too many stuff than time actually allows. I don't really even know, but I have a great team, so it allows me. But there's something about me that has been from young that's allowed me the capacity to work at a really high rate for long periods of time. And in the pandemic, I was working 16 hours a day. I had 3 jobs. One, I was volunteering. And I just broke. I broke. My brain wasn't working. And there was a time when I was in Cape Town and I was in my apartment, and I did like my 4th Zoom call, and I collapsed. I was just lying on the floor. And I was lying on the floor and I was just like, I don't know who would save me right now. it's quite a dark thought. Like who's coming to get me from being on the floor, passed out? I didn't really know who to call. I'm in another country, and I was a bit like, why am I here? And I think very similar to what you said about being so rewarded in your doing, I didn't honor my being, and I just gave so much to depletion. And it became a really consistent habit. And I think at that point, I just made a decision. I'm done. And I said goodbye to everything that was serving me and not serving me. I just drew a line. Because in that moment, I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know who I can turn to. And then shortly afterwards, I held a meeting with my team and some people that I knew, and I told every single person that I knew that was in close proximity to me that something isn't right and I need help. And this is not about them in any way, shape, or form, but it's like, I don't think anyone could help me. And so the life I had built was hugely inauthentic. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy. And regardless of what the external validation was, I wasn't happy and I wasn't at peace. And so I didn't actually know what to do with that information. And I've been in therapy for 8 years. So I love my therapy sessions. Me and my therapist were like, yo, I miss you. Can I tell you some things?
Have you been?
No, it's like I miss her if I don't speak to her for too long. So then I'm sitting down with her, and then one day, and the thing is, therapists don't fix you. They just prod a little bit. Like, why though? What's that about? And she was just like, why have you built all of this? Why did you build this community that's like, why? And I was like, well, because basically what happened was I was sad one day and I created a WhatsApp group and then everybody liked it. Then they wanted to add more people. Then those people wanted to add more people. And then everyone was like, this is great. Let's add more people. And then before you know it, we had like 5 WhatsApps, 3 continents, thousands of people, every single intersection of blackness, all these groups. And I was like, I don't know why I'd done this. I don't know that I actually came here because I was sad, and I'm still sad. And it's been 2 years and I haven't fixed any of my sadness. And so I became really self-interested and very protected. I put boundaries in place for the first time ever in my life, by the way. Like, I used to just give, like, whatever it is, you can just have it. Like, if you need to use my name to go get a job, have it. If you need to borrow some money, have it. We're all figuring it out together. I just dishonored myself day in, day out. And the day I put boundaries in place, my life and my people in my life changed irreparably. And so it took a year to find peace in that because I couldn't believe it. I was like, no. Maybe they don't understand. They don't understand. Okay, guys, so I was really sad. I just keep telling this story to people and nothing would turn on. And so I now just protect my life. I have real boundaries. I really honor myself. I put myself first. I don't do things I don't want to do. I say no way more than I ever have in my life. I love myself for the first time. That's a whole new thing, by the way, when you actually love yourself and being by yourself is not a problem. You just sit there. Oh, thank you. And so I shared all of this on my podcast, and it's so weird because, again, that was the only place I could just speak freely. It was safe to me. And obviously it goes out into the world. So I go to a meeting and they'll be like, Marvin, your podcast when you said that thing. I was like, what did I say? Oh shit. Can you give me the money still? Because I got stuff. And you forget how the boundaries of the barriers between you and the world. And I just started sharing. And that became my way of finding peace. But there's loads of transformative ways for you to discover it. But the moment of something isn't right here, and it's just how bold and brave are you going to be about doing something about it? And mine was quite radical and resulted in many things that I had to lose and say goodbye to. But on the other side of it, I couldn't go back also. And so I say goodbye from a sad place, but really really honoring what actually the outcome was and how much it was very much worth it.
Wow, strong.
We can go in any order.
Okay, surrender several times because pride is a very strong thing. I surrender, then I go back to what I used to do before, and I surrender again, I go back to what I used to do before. I guess if I'm thinking about the first time it really hit me, it was probably when I left Blue Peter. I'd done it for 5 years. I was the first ever black guy to host this iconic kids show. And what I hadn't realized is that I'd built up an identity that wasn't really authentic to who I was as an individual. I think a lot of people can probably attest to this if you're often the only person in certain spaces. I travel across the world, 118 different cities around the world, met the Queen. I mean, it was insane. Literally traveled from the age of 23 to the age of 28, met some of the most incredible people. I left that show and I realized I actually had nothing like I could hold on to. It's because my life revolved around being a TV presenter. My life revolved around doing a lot. And I generally broke down. What a lot of people don't realize is that, like, Blue Peter is an incredible show, right? But it's actually a show that's created under sort of like, I guess, a colonial ideology. The ship itself, Blue Peter, it's a ship from the 1800s, right? It's a real ship. And it was sent out on a voyage of discovery. That's what this ship was. And what is a voyage of discovery for a ship like that? Where is it headed? So you get this mismatch, really. You hire the first ever black male presenter.
Did you get that when you started the show? Is it something that emerged for you while...
It emerged after the first shoot, yeah. Like, we were just talking backstage, and basically we did a tour of the southern states of America. This was the very first trip that I'd be doing as a presenter on this show. The southern states of America is riddled with some interesting history. And no one in production had thought about that. Yeah, I know, it sounds crazy, but no one in production had thought about that. And, you know, if we want to go there, I mean, like, literally, I remember being in a bar in Texas, and I was a cowboy, learned to be a cowboy. I can ride a horse, I'm sick, I'm amazing, like, it's really good. And basically, we were a cowboy for like 3 or 4 days, learn out on the ranch. I mean, that stuff is brilliant. And also, I'm going to preface this. The reason I actually chose to do Blue Pete was because I realized we'd never seen a person of color, other than Diane Louise Jordan, actually, who was doing crazy stuff that a lot of white people were doing, like jumping out of planes and riding horses and stuff like that. I just wanted to flip the script a little bit and go, actually, yeah, we're not this like binary race that all we do is music and sport. I wanted to show us as heroes, and I was very conscious of that. But the experience in that show often beat me down to the point where I had to sort of assimilate and pretend that nothing existed. And I remember after we had an altercation with a cowboy who basically accosted me, and he said, "Look, there ain't no black cowboys around here, boy."
Was the camera on at that?
No, this was off camera. This is when they left me by myself at that point. I don't know why. I was at the bar, just getting licked because this trauma was crazy. I was getting drunk. And he comes up to me and he says, there are no black cowboys around here, so just so you know, I'm not going to try an American accent, just so you know, it gets mighty mean out on these streets after 12 o'clock. And I looked at him and I was like, okay. And then the barman sort of takes him out saying, don't think about it, blah, blah. Day after, obviously tell my producer, and she was like, look, you know, you're a Blue Peter presenter, and, you know, we just got to do these things. These things happen. I was like, no, not to you. And I'm not going to go into every nuance of every trip that I was on, but you end up building this force field, but also it's like being in the military as well, where I'm a lad from Birmingham. I grew up in Selly Oak in Birmingham. Like, I've got a Birmingham accent, right? And you're working under the BBC, and they're like, "What did you say? Was that an accent? Can you like speak proper English?" And it's really scary because when you're 23 years old and this is your first experience in television, you just kind of do it because you turn back and there's no one there that looks like you, or no one there to fight your corner. So what I'd done for 5 years, fundamentally, regardless of being BAFTA nominated or whatever, was I'd built this kind of Blue Peter ideal, which wasn't actually akin to who I was. So I left the show and I just broke down. Everything was on the floor. Everything was in pieces. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And it was hard. I checked myself into therapy because I'm a bit of a doer still, because I'm like, this feels weird. I need to do something about this. But that process of therapy was, and still is, fascinating, because you realize where the fight comes from. You sort of, you slip into vulnerability and you come back and go, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. And my therapist said something that really dropped me. And he said, but what you're doing isn't working, is it? And I thought, no, it's not working, actually. And that really brought on a lot of introspective kind of understanding about why it was I was trying to assimilate and going back to heritage. I was born in Nigeria, former British colony. What was I trying to emulate? What was I trying to do? Where did I feel like I was being accepted? And yeah, like it sent me on a spiral. And to be honest with you, it's a constant checking of oneself continuously. I'm now 39 years old, and that checking of oneself is very different because I have more pride in who I am. I have more pride in the source. I have more pride in where I want to go. But you're still checking continuously. So I don't know, maybe I'll have another one at some point, but I feel now I have the tools in place to really help me persist and keep going.
Just before we come to Huie, I want to ask about your name change.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, does anyone remember the name change? It was pretty well publicized.
So yeah, like while I was on Blue Peter, I was called Andy, right? And that's my Christian name, right? It's my Christian name. And I remember when we came, because I actually grew up in Nigeria. I moved to Birmingham when I was 8 years old, and that was the name my parents put on the register, just to make sure that, you know, I evaded any licks or whatever, like, were gonna come my way. And, you know, that was part of the realization of oneself, really, is about, so I started reading articles once I left Blue Peter about people of different ethnicities applying for jobs under pseudonyms. And I thought, what? And there was this incredible article about an Indian guy who'd sent the same CV to different places under English names and under his Indian name, and the English names got, like, regardless of, like, everything else, it was just a name thing. And I started looking around and asking myself, like, what is the British story? What is the modern British story? Is the modern British story Ayo Akinwolere mixed with John Smith, or is it just John Smith? And for me, it's like a coming outing, isn't it? It's like you're coming out as yourself, literally. You're coming out as yourself. You're coming out as your authentic self. And I guess the validation you do get is that's where the community stand up and they go, me too. And it was incredible because I'd been hiding as Andy for so many years. The moment Ayo came out, the community is like, you know, we watched you, bro. And that connect was beautiful. And yeah, I mean, that transformation keeps going on and on and on and on and on, and you have to keep checking oneself. But that was definitely a moment where I'm like, I can't hide anymore. And actually, everything I do moving forward on the credits, it has to be Ayo Akinwolere, you know, Nigerian boy from Birmingham, you know what I'm saying?
To you. Surrender.
You guys just left, yeah, you said some big things. I think for myself, you know what I'm finding hard to kind of find the pinpoint is because I don't break. Like, that's my defense mechanism. I don't like being vulnerable. I can't stand it. That's not to say like I'm a hard nut, but it's just that vulnerability is, in the wrong spaces, can be abused and taken advantage of. So I don't like being in that space of vulnerability. So breaking isn't something I like to do or give into. But surrender for me, I think the most signposting moment was when I found out I was pregnant and then giving birth to my daughter, because the person I was before having her, I wasn't necessarily very confident about. And I felt that having my daughter, she needs someone that she can look up to, because it's, you know, she needs someone to look up to, and I need to be a fully rounded person for her, so that she can lean on me whenever she needs. Because of my traumatic moments of upbringing, I never wanted her to experience that, and I wanted to be fully present, so I had to fix myself up. And it's very interesting being a woman on a panel with two guys, Not, as in the people talking, not to exclude you, but it's because the both of you have done therapy. I haven't, and it's usually women are like, "Oh, I'm in therapy," and guys are like, "Oh, I haven't done that yet," and I haven't done therapy. Again, it's that vulnerability. There's a fear of it, so it's just interesting in two men saying that. But and also I'm a Scorpio, and we think we know everything. And
Where's my daughter? Where are you, Monet, my little Scorpio baby?
yay, Monet. It's very, I self-analyze, so I do pride myself in taking myself through it. So I'm very aware of my flaws, of what I need to do and how to do it and how to fix it. But my daughter is my mirror. She's the person that I feel like I had to answer to. Being a black woman, being a woman who's ambitious, being a woman who I've been subservient to other people. I've served people rather than serving myself. I haven't loved myself. I haven't put myself first. And then when I had my daughter, I was like, I've got to put her first. And though it's playing second fiddle to her, at least that means I've got to take care of myself, because I'm not in a whole place. She's not going to get the best out of me. And I need to raise a child that doesn't destroy the earth because of my madness. So it's real. It's real. I want to make sure my child, leaves a good impression. That's important to me. But yeah, so I don't have a big lofty answer, but it's my daughter who was
I really appreciate you saying that, though, because I think just the honesty. Because there'll be lots of people here that actually, most people don't like being vulnerable. Let's face it, like most people don't. And so it's just beautiful for you just to say that and just take the pin out, Yeah. So sometimes the barriers which keep us from that connection to our authentic self are external, and sometimes they are internal. Often they are internal, and a mixture of both, right? And I was thinking about, so my coach, we've been doing a lot of work, shout out to Anna Garcia, we've been doing a lot of work on what is called the reticular activating system, the filter in our brain that means that whatever our childhood, most of us have had trauma, yeah? To some degree. There's lots of evidence now. People get scared of the word, but that's the reality. And we've all been through the pandemic, so we've all had a level of trauma, even if you haven't had the big childhood stuff. And the filter in our brain means that because our brains can't take in all of the information, it will filter out and leave us with evidence for whatever our default stories are. So if you have an abandonment story, which I do because of my childhood experiences, it means that my brain will find evidence for abandonment even where it doesn't exist. So if I don't get a response to an email, I can immediately go to, shit, I've done something. What have I done? But that awareness, that increasing awareness that is there, means that there's a moment to go, oh, actually, she's probably busy, right? Which is often the reality. And that knowing of ourself is where freedom starts to present itself, the more that we start to connect to ourselves and have an awareness of this stuff. And it showed up a couple of nights ago. I went to visit my mum. And my relationship with my mum is still healing. It's better than it's ever been, but it's still healing. And we were sitting down, my daughter and my mum and I, having a conversation. And I knew she'd been back to college when I was a toddler to study Black history. And I just thought it's because she had an interest. But what emerged through that conversation was that she'd made the decision to go back to college when I was a toddler because she had mixed heritage kids. And because of this awareness of my own default stories, I was able to hear her with this new openness. And it blew me away. I thought that's the most beautiful thing, that you consciously decided to go and take this step because of the children that you were raising. And can you imagine like the potential for that? Like the potential of us knowing ourselves, the impact of that on that relationship and on that next generation. And I want to speak to you, Huie, because you were fostered, right? Yep. So I know we have a little bit in common in different ways around that. Like what are you learning about your stories, and how have they got in the way of you realizing your own innate greatness?
That's deep.
Damn.
Wow.
I told you I don't like being vulnerable.
Safe space.
Do you know, it's what you said, it's abandonment, rejection. And that's played into me never wanting to piss anyone off or upset anyone. And that's where I wasn't serving myself, I was serving others. So I grew up being very second fiddle to some of my friends, and it's not their fault. But my vulnerability and my sensitivity and my need to be liked meant that they had the upper hand in our relationship, and I would never query when they did something wrong to me. I'd never argue back. I might, push up my face a bit, but, they're like, well, are you getting upset about that? And throw it back on me. That projection, I received projection a lot, and I didn't deal with it. So that comes from being fostered as a baby, and then coming back home, and then being fostered again like around 8, 9. And I haven't done therapy, but I have analysed myself to understand that, if you disconnected from your parents in whatever capacity as a baby, that bond, because even looking at my child, her going to stay with her nan or staying with friends, and she just wants to be with me, that cry that she gave at times when she just wanted to be with me, imagine being separated from your parents when you had no say in it. And though me and my mother and I have a great relationship, it's I wouldn't say it's tumultuous, but I think I used to also put it down to, she's an old school Ghanaian mum, and I'm a British-born African child. So our worlds are so far apart. So what I was going through, I could never explain to her. She would never understood why I wanted to go partying, why that if I wanted to go to a rave, it didn't mean I was going to take drugs and have 10 babies at 12. So it's just that communication was not there. On top of the fact we have separation. And it's only in later life and being a mother where I realized I went through a time when my child was about similar age to when I was fostered the second time. And me and my mum clashed so much because I kept looking at my daughter and thinking, imagine if she was in a little village in Somerset on her own with no other black people, but in a family that didn't like her. That's what I experienced. Thankfully, I didn't have anything extreme like abuse or anything like that other people went through, but I was in a family that the mother especially did not like me, or she was in it for the money. So those type of things, and I definitely in that moment, raising my child at that time, my mum and I clashed, but I also had to deal with respectability because again, traditional African upbringing, who am I arguing with? Who am I telling, like, Mum, I don't like you, I'm in a mood, I don't want to talk to you, or shut up? That's impossible. It's an impossible conversation. Even today, I could never. But that frustration, that barrier, that frustration, that barrier, you suppress. I'm a suppressor. I suppress my emotions because there were so many times when I felt like if I dared to speak up, maybe I don't have it actual fact that I thought that maybe if I speak, I'm going to get rejected, but that was my behavior. So I kept quiet. I was my mum might say I wasn't good, but I was a good girl in that sense. I didn't answer back. I didn't make noise. I kept myself quiet. And also growing up in that space where no one around me had experienced being fostered, or I think most of my friends were Caribbean. And then, so there was a cultural disconnect where there's some things that maybe I went through that maybe they went through as well, but because I felt I'm African, I'm different, I couldn't talk about that. I also have a brother who's deaf and autistic, and he was fostered. So there were so many things going on in my world that I felt I couldn't speak to anyone about, kept it to myself. Couldn't speak to mum, kept it to myself. Dad's not in the home, kept it to myself. So all this stuff I've learned to keep it to myself. So I forgot your question and I've gone on a tangent, but that's...
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Marvin, you talked about that putting of boundaries in place, which is that essential step on the path to healing, right? And then the fallout of that coming out, and then the fallout of that. And the question that came up for me was it's almost like you're asked, what are you willing to let go of? In my experience, it was this, being more of me is after my dad passed on, I couldn't be who I'd been before. It was impossible. It felt I just couldn't. And that meant I couldn't work in the way I was working before. I just couldn't. It was too painful to remain in that old version of myself. But that coming out, as you described it so aptly, because I think that's exactly what it is, requires you to be willing to let go of stuff. And that takes so much courage. And so my question to you is, what were you willing to let go of?
So, when I was going through like the transformative phase, and there were so many people that I liked. Like if you think about my wheel of personality includes like loads of like ratchet stuff, like righteous stuff, like really nice reading time and like podcasting, but also just doing. I'm very, very spontaneous. I'm the first one on a plane, and the way I live my life is like I'll tell people I'm getting on a plane. Do you want to come? That's the kind of conversations we'll have. And so quite randomly, I'll be in another country with people, and you'll be like, I'll be like, this is my normal existence. And when I realized that my way of being, where I got my joy and my inspiration that fueled my purpose, that allowed me to be the person that I was, anything that was impacting that had to really come on the table. And when it's people you like and they fit in your wheel and you enjoy their company, and it's people you love and they're like, that's my best friend in the world, but like there's something in the fabric of how the relationship was developed that doesn't allow you to be your best self. And I had developed this act of like being this like father figure. This like, it was an act. And when I say that, not to my children, we're gangbusters now. We're like, this is the best thing ever. But there was just something in the wider world of like this sort of paternal figure who was like, and I'm not. Like I'm way more Jay-Z than I am like Martin Luther King, you know? Like I'll be really honest. Like there's things that I lean into that I'm curious by that I have to find answers for. Like that's a part of my value system. And when I developed my values, it was 2018, and I was like, I've never really been value led. I've just been like navigating opportunities based on the moment. How do I feel? What do I think? And I honestly, deep down in the core of my being, believe that good people don't win. Like, I just believed it. I was like, the only way to get ahead is to shuck and jive, move, cut people up. And so I said, I don't want to participate in that. So I just did nothing. I was like, I ain't doing none of those things. And then one day, someone introduced me to the idea of creating values. And I created these values based on what I wanted in my life. And I was like, actually, so I'm going to be loving, I'm going to be powerful, I'm going to be integrous, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to be authentic. So that means I will tell you to go F yourself as well as like I love you at the same, like those things can happen in one conversation. And I was like, that gives me room to play, gives me room to be who I actually am. And then like after about a year, the idea of being loving was annoying me. And I was like, I am loving, but like I feel like when you tell people that you're loving, they feel like it gives them room to play in your playground. Like they can just come up to you and just be like, go on, be loving. And I was just like, this is weird. Why are you using that as a challenge? Why are you not honoring the loving spaces that I create? So I just decided just to take that one out. And I just replaced it with curious. And now I treat the world as a curious place. If something moves me, you can't. I'm off. You can't look me in the eyes. I'm going where I'm going to do the thing that I'm doing. And it leads me in some of the most amazing spaces, and it fills me with joy. And that's one thing in the Black experience, like joy is not common. Like every time I go on my phone, there's a new leader or a new institutional idiot or someone doing something dumb. And you're like, And by the way, both of my companies are dedicated to social change. So I live immersed in this idea of like helping people transform from their stupid ideas to like inclusive, representative, loving and kind and thoughtful ideas. And so after a while, you just feel like everything is not great. And I had to really reconnect with humanity in a way of like, I can see the best in humanity still. I can still believe that this is going to go well in the end, because that feeling is what drove me for pretty much most of the last 6 years. It's just like believing that there are really good people still in really good places making really important decisions. And there's for a period of time, and sometimes now, you just don't feel like there is. And this is why I'm very intentional about who's in my space. I'm intentional about who I support, work with, help, and connect with, because I want my world to be, and I'm happy to create an echo chamber. I'm not one of those people that believe I should have contrarians in my space. I'm happy to create an echo chamber to be like, this is my community of people that have shared the same value and worldviews, and I want us to go through this together. I don't want to let other people in. So, to surmise, I can't remember the question now, but the point is, the point is that it really is a journey. And what did you believe on? I had to leave everything. Everything had to go on the table. I had to potentially be gone for me to find the peace that I needed to. And really, it's like when you say goodbye to everything, you start moving in life again, but the door's open, but under new terms. And if they can honor the new terms, then there's space, there's room, there's food, there's everything. You can have a seat. But if it's not, then we just can't coexist. And not everyone will be happy for you in your freedom and in your peace at all. I really thought it did. I came home from my Vipassana and I was like, everyone's going to be really happy for me because I'm very peaceful. I've meditated 11 hours a day for 10 days straight and not said a word. I feel very peaceful. And it wasn't necessarily the case.
Can I just want to ask you something, actually, because just following on that, it's interesting when you hit that sort of place of freedom and what you start to see, because like when you're in the darkness, it's very hard to see the good people, right? And it's like, I can't remember I was reading psychologically, it's like, if you say you really want a red car, you're going to see a red car everywhere you go, right? So if you kind of tune into that frequency, what's presented to you, which would probably have been presented to you pre the freedom, you just start to see it in a whole different light, and it then resonates with you in a much more pure way, surely.
Sure. So I've been very lucky to so I had a human strategist in my company, which is basically a psychologist, and I've also got a medium who's a great friend of mine, and I see her maybe once every 2 months, and I have a therapist. I have a team. And so when when I have real questions about what's happening, and so when things was going wrong, I was like, what's happening? Because I was in a meeting with the mayor this morning, and the Tory party are trying to call me to help with something. And I'm like, leave me alone. We've got 3 black projects over there trying to help blackness. And I was just like, why are people not happy? And then she was just like, Marvin, this is the context in which all of this is happening. And she gave me the landscape of my being. So I understood my presence in the space. Because sometimes it's not really even about you. And obviously I'm very self-indulgent in my own story. I'm the star, I am everything, I'm the most important part of it. But then in that moment I was like, oh, it's nothing to do with me. And I had to just accept it. This is what's going on in the wider world. And when we go through these adverse experiences, it's incredibly important that we gain perspective. You need healthy minds around you. And that's not always present, it's not always possible. So I am the first to be like, even if you go therapy without really a goal, and just have a chit chat for a couple of hours, it's vibes. Because they're trained to hear you. And your friends, no disrespect to the person sitting next to you, aren't necessarily equipped to help you. And they may give terrible advice. Like, stump him. Or just leave your job. It's fine, you'll work out. Oh. Sorry, I made that voice feminine. I don't know why. That has nothing.
Change it. Do it again in a masculine voice.
I actually can't, because it was a moment, but it was not gendered at all.
Beyonce.
I can't believe it.
Will you signal, because I want to make sure we have time for Q&A, so let us know when we have 5 minutes. I want to talk about love and relationships a little bit.
Jesus, okay.
Because this disconnection that, we all suffer from, disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from each other, in our homes, in our communities, in the world, in my opinion, is the root cause of everything that's wrong. It would be impossible to have, for anyone that's watched my TED Talk, shout out to my TED coaches in here, Lane and Kirsten. I feel like feeling is, we need to feel. And I want to share this little anecdote. So my friend Kasanu, who gave me full permission to share this story, she's over in Jamaica, she was seeing this guy for several years, and they were together, but she felt something was up. Anyway, one day, she was planning her future with this guy, and one day, she wasn't the kind of person to sort of be checking phones and stuff, like all of that stuff. She was really sort of confident in herself and in their relationship for the most part. But for whatever reason, one day she decided to call a taxi, and she has his phone. While she's looking at the phone, a message pops up from another woman. Now, he's sitting over there sort of stretched out on the sofa, happy as Larry, listening to music. They've got a bottle of wine. Message pops up, and it's clearly a woman who is not in a platonic friendship with her partner. She says, I'm not going to say anything. The phone dings again. A second woman pops up, also clearly having a liaison with her partner. A third message pops up.
Can I just contextualize? This has nothing to do with the fact that this is Jamaica. As a Jamaican man, those two bits of data are not
Swiftly
connected.
moving.
Thank
Actually,
you.
he was a Brit. He was a Brit. There'll be no perpetuating stereotypes tonight. Anyway, says the daughter of a Jamaican. So, anyway, she sat there. But there's a serious side to this. It really is. And she sat there, and she's done a lot of work with herself. She knows herself. And she put the phone down, and she said, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And he was like, "What?" And she just handed him the phone. He's black. He turned white. And she was like, what's going on? Because immediately she had this incredible capacity, which, I'm not there, to be able to see beyond what was unfolding in front of her and see that the only way this person who loved her could possibly be behaving in a way which, even if that was his truth and he just, this is what he wanted to be doing, he wasn't being honest with it. So there was some internal conflict that he was dealing with. And she sat there and you know what? He opened up and he said, "I just feel like I can't be on my own." And that was only, and the relationship ended. But what I thought was so powerful about that story is that we don't connect like that. Like we connect mask to mask. How many of us are truly honest and unconditionally love each other in our relationships, be it daughter and father, or husband and wife, or friend to friend, or in the workplace. And actually, from that space of true unconditional love, because it doesn't mean you stick around and put up with behavior which isn't nourishing to your soul, but when we can see beyond the stuff into this sort of innate goodness that is at the root of all of us, what becomes possible? And I just wonder how much, that last film, so powerful at, looking at the constructs of masculinity and black masculinity specifically, but there's constructs of masculinity across the board and of femininity, right? But it's got its other layers with black men. And I want to ask you guys about that. Like, how have you begun to deconstruct that damaging, construct of what it means to be a black man and a black woman?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. You're looking at me. It's tough. It's tough, and it's still an ongoing journey, because ego is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Look, I'll just preface this. I'll be straight. Like, from the age of 23 to 28, those years of my life, I was just loose and enjoying life, like doing whatever. Didn't care who it was, whatever. I was just out.
Judgment.
No judgment. And I actually said to myself, well, you're a TV presenter, so you don't need to settle down or meet someone or whatever. Whilst that might have been true, that was definitely masking a deeper sense of self-loathing, if I'm honest with you, and not feeling comfortable with who I was and what all this around me was. Also, when I did sort of fall into situations, like a relationship of sorts, they were so tumultuous. They were so not like what I would have wanted them to be, even though I was like, do you know what, I think I'm ready. And I just kept picking. And because I have to be honest, I picked them. And that was a hard thing to actually get to grips with. I was picking my partners. And I got to maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought, do you know what, you keep saying you want something solid, you keep saying you want something substantial, but actually what you're doing isn't actually that. And that was a process of deconstructing. That was a process of, do you like yourself? That was a process of, how do you love yourself? Because if you don't love yourself properly and care for yourself and nourish yourself, you're not going to be able to do that with someone else. And I don't know if anyone's seen the play,
Black Boys Are Considered Suicide?
Exactly. And I saw it at the Royal Court recently, and it was about, really good play, superb play. It's about 6 young black men from different walks of life. One's a gay black man, one's a sort of a man of mixed heritage, and they have a conversation, and it's sort of, the play kind of transpires in the way they all sort of navigate different spaces. And I was literally watching these stories going, oh my God, that's me, that's me, that's me. And it's this baggage of what I thought being a man should be, based on upbringing, based on pride, based on so many things that I was not willing to deconstruct. And you talk about breakdown moments and all that kind of stuff. In my breaking down, I had to build myself up, and that came from realizing what I was doing wasn't working. That was part of my conversation with my therapist. You keep saying you want to do this, but actually what you're doing is not working. And it's also hard to fight habit, because it's also all I knew. It's also what I'd fooled myself to think that this was what I needed, quick ting, and then I move on. But actually, what I wasn't doing is allowing myself to be vulnerable in these spaces, to go through not just the good stuff, but the really deep stuff. And I can't say enough the beauty of connecting with that vulnerability with someone else. It's like the most powerful thing ever. It's scary as hell. I'm not gonna lie, I still find it hard. But that's how growth comes. And then when you get to that point and going, actually, I can't grow unless I've done the deep stuff. I can't actually grow unless I've been to that place. Then you're just gonna literally be living that linear life. And the weird thing is, once you've done a bit more work, you just start looking around and you're going, oh, bro, no. But they have to get there themselves. You know what I mean?
I love looking at you when you're about to say
Go on.
Okay. All right. Let's turn it over to the audience.
No, you got away with it. I was ready for that one.
Oh, what's this? Charlene's on the news.
Me?
No, it's all right. It's good. Okay.
What do you want me to speak? Oh,
Yes.
so about like
Just like
being a black woman, right? Being a black woman, okay. I think because I feel like I've left some vulnerability on the table, but the reason why I'm here today doing the work that I do, and I think I've been a pretty good mum as well, is because I have recognized myself. It's taken a while to love myself. I don't know if I completely, no, I love myself, but fully done the work and really, truly understand who I am. But that is having those honest conversations. And in this world, it's very hard to be a black woman, fully rounded, fully accepted, fully sympathized. And I think empathy is our problem. Empathy is what's lacking when you're trying to navigate this world as a black woman, personally. And I feel like our story isn't allowed to be and breathe and exist with people receiving it truthfully, honestly, and patiently. And that's been my struggle, I think, as being a black woman in this space. But it's also about, I've had to learn to forgive myself and also remove that automatic maternal forgiveness of others, because when you were saying about being paternal and being in that space and embracing it, because sometimes it's like, it's safe to be the mother. I sometimes say, we've got a podcast called Your Aunties Could Never, and I say I'm the maternal, I'm the mother hen, because that caring position of loving everyone, and being the mother's a safe space, because everyone kind of has to love you. So it's a kind of like a defense mechanism. You have to love me because I'm your mum. But it's removing that automatic need to forgive everyone and holding people accountable, and not being afraid to be labeled as an angry black woman or a defensive black woman or a woman who's just ratchet or loud and rowdy. I'm allowed to be. If I want to be rowdy, I'm going to be rowdy. And I think definitely hitting my 40s post has allowed that. Also becoming a mother and maturity, it's hand in hand. But being a mother, I realized I have to show my daughter that she doesn't have to be subservient. She doesn't have to take bullshit from anyone. She has to love herself and speak for herself and do for herself. And she is quite individual. She does do what she wants. And I've learned to do what I want. I'm not going to do what you want just because you said it. I'm going to do what I want. I think that's what you have to do. And as a black woman, don't let those labels hold you back. If you are ratchet, then be ratchet, embrace it. It's okay. It's okay because other people's problems and other people's projections that box you in. You've got to do work. And yes, Marvin, I saw you look at me. I will call my therapist tomorrow. I'll call a therapist tomorrow. I'll find one. But it is that. It's like knowing yourself and finding yourself and really exploring your flaws. But being ready for when you meet someone, if those of you want to be dating and stuff, it's just being a fully rounded person. Or if you're not, just be understanding of your flaws and come to the table honestly. And I do think black men don't have patience with black women who aren't fully ready. And I do think black women are more patient than black men. And I do think we let you lot off a lot more. That's another conversation.
We all have work to do. We all have work. All right.
Just to add some Jerry Springer to this.
We'll finish it on that one, eh? Shall we go?
I'm playing. I'm not.
Who's got the roving mic? Here. Who's got the roving mic?
Is it that one?
Oh, okay. We've got someone to. Oh, there's somebody up there. Hi. Do we have a question? Right up here. Right up here.
I need one on that side.
Yeah. Okay.
Project.
This is my first time in London.
Hello.
Welcome.
8 a.m. this morning, and this is my first experience in London.
Come on.
I have 5 more cities to visit, but I feel like I'm supposed to be here today. If I go home tomorrow, I was supposed to be here, so I really appreciate everybody and really appreciate you guys. So I wrote down my thoughts. So this is my question for you guys. So we talked about going through a moment in life of being inauthentic and transitioning from doing and being. I hear these amazing stories of breakthrough, and those moments are important. I'd hate for people to think that they have to avoid those inauthentic moments. They can also actually avoid the breakthrough as well. So do you think it's necessary to have those inauthentic moments in order to have the breakthrough moments?
Great question. Do you want to address it to somebody, just from a?
But it's about shallow integration, breaking the habit of being yourself. Like some of these things, the things that we left, are also part of the things that push us into the places we need to be. And they can be painful sometimes, but they're also necessary. You know, you have to be careful with what happens to you versus what happens for you. That can be a hard thing to say to some people. But what I'm hearing from you guys, based on your experiences, now it got me rambling now. I wanted to put that out there, the importance of the inauthentic and not avoiding it because it's part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, the awakening is understanding you were inauthentic, right? And whilst you're in that mode, I mean, for me, it's like a coping mechanism, isn't it? Like, depending on the situation. And my inauthenticity, to a certain degree, came from, I guess, a lack of a sense of self in many respects. And not everyone has that eureka moment, like, genuinely. But also, I think, back to what you've said and back to what you've also said, Aqua, is that, like, understanding that you need help or understanding that you need to go somewhere, I can't give anybody that. You have to make that choice yourself, fundamentally. And some people still want to stay in that mode because it feels safe. And it's back to sort of what I said about deconstructing oneself. It's like you actually have to go there. Otherwise, you don't know what's on the other end. And so I definitely do think, like, you have to go through that because you wouldn't know otherwise that you've been inauthentic unless you have to go through a journey to the point you were like, do I even remember that person from 2 or 3 years ago? And actually, my thing is, on the flip side, what did I learn from that person?
And is it authentic? It's like, actually, we only know what we know at any given
At that point,
moment,
that's what
right?
I mean,
It's like,
right?
we're just being, we're there with the level of awareness that we've got at any given time, and we get to take things. I certainly have taken, I'm sure you guys have, like things from that period of your life that which didn't align, you repurpose them into this expanded version of yourself, right? So
can I just invite people to this idea that, like, there is an addiction to trauma, And it's like, if there's not a big hurdle in front of it, I didn't earn it. And so me and my children, and I'm fortunate enough to have the space, capacity, and information to create this with my children. But like, for instance, my son who's 6, sometimes I would just like put him over a closed park and be like, how are you gonna get out? And I just give him the trial. I'm there, I haven't abandoned him, but it's a trial. He's got to think, he's looking around, what do I climb on, what do I step on? And I can see him figuring it out. And it's like, it is a hurdle in a way, but I'm not like beating him. And I'm not like throwing him on the floor and telling him he's nothing and being like overcoming. The concept, and in Blackness, there's so much trial built into our existence. You wake up and you are faced with layers upon layers of it. And after hearing men speak about their trials for like 5 years, I honestly am so avert from the idea of like creating any trials for anybody. And it's this radical idea. One of my mental well-being team came to me and said, "Can you commit to the idea of never creating harm for a black woman ever again?" And I was like, "Ooh, how do you do that?" And it was like consciously knowing that if you are not meant to be there, not being there, don't create anything for anyone to overcome again. And it's a really beautiful, simple idea. And sometimes we're just like, yeah, but like she might like it too, or she might want to play. Like, no, just like move yourself away. You are not prepared for the task ahead. And I think sometimes like trying to find trauma light experiences is the new like overcoming, because I think the mental resilience of the 70s, 80s, and 90s clearly didn't work. Like it left men outside of their families, outside of their peace, outside of their joy, rendered them basically useless in society globally. It's unworkable to create that for us anymore. So my thing is like, yes, we should be honoring when things do happening, but we also got to work our best to avoid some of those challenges and learn from other practices. I learned more from my Vipassana than I did from any hardship that I've ever created. And that discipline, that consistency, those values are the actual teachings.
I think we just got time for one more question. There's got to be a woman. That lady there, behind the man in the cap. Let's see. Elaine, I couldn't see your face. Thank you for the question. Yeah, because, well, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. I don't think I think like my purpose is just to keep being more of myself, to keep discovering like where my masks are and removing them and expressing myself joyfully and giving like this constant checking in with how do I feel, what do I need? And sometimes that's a cup of tea, and sometimes it's to wake up and see the ocean and then acting on it, like being brave and being willing to let go of the stuff that I have to let go of in order to make those leaps, be it a marriage or be it a continent, you know. And so it's a continual stripping back to become more of myself. That's my only purpose. And then my experience is that the more that I do that, the more the doing I'll feel inspired to do things like tonight. And it feels amazing to be having these conversations with all of you. It feels so purposeful because, you know, it emerged from a space that was all heart, grief, like broken open, like that's emerged from that moment. You know, like what a way to be able to honor that hardest moment in my life, and my dad's journey and all of his resilience that you know, gosh, you know, we're in Windrush era right now, aren't we? You know, as a Windrush man, and the way that he had to suppress his needs and his pain for us to be able to sit here and have black men having conversations. Like I'm just so full. Yeah, so full. So thank you. I just want to thank you, like, wonderful panel, for being so open and sharing so honestly. Thank you. I guess we're inviting Tian and Anthony back to the stage. Can we, yeah? You can stay. Stay.
Hello? Okay, we're on. How was that? Do you guys enjoy that? Yeah? Well, listen, thank you so much for all being a part of this. This was a really, like I said at the beginning, it was a labour of love for us, like putting this event together, and it was just, it was a real push for us. And I think it's a great way of us coming back after the pandemic and doing something a little bit different with the music and movement that you saw earlier and the conversations that we've had and the films that we've shown. So, you know, thank you for just trusting us and, you know, really going along with us on this journey. So, but the night's not over yet. We've still got some more stuff. We've got Zizi Afore here, DJ, who's going to be spinning on the wheels of steel just behind us. Stick around for the Purpose Pledge, which I mentioned earlier. So just to remind you, we've got 2 Purpose Pledge booths where you can go in, do a video to camera talking about, you know, how you're going to move in your purpose. And in 6 months' time, if you give us your email address, we will send you that video and you can see how you're getting on. So please do that. We're going to do ours, aren't we? We're going to do ours. And yeah, just get to know one another. Like, you know, this is a space. Like I said, we're creators in residence. We're trying to take over this thing, right? So, you know, we want to be doing this all the time. So we want to build a community of people who are like-minded, like as Marvin said, you know, people who, you know, have all got a similar vision, you know, creatives, people that love black cinema. We want to, you know, create a community. So please do get to know one another during the networking. And yeah, nothing left to do but thanking the Barbican T. You want to thank anyone else?
And thank you, Jess.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you. Thank you.
And work with.
And our film,
Super
we have to talk our filmmakers as well and make sure, yeah. Thank you to the Jesse's not here tonight. Jesse Romeo of who was behind Home. Who is here? Jason is Jason is here, but
here. Yeah, there he is.
Jason, Jason, stand up. Jason, stand up.
Director of Love
the Love Languages director.
Over to you.
Yeah, so go network, go do the Purpose
Thank
Pledge.
you, guys.
And yeah, we'll see you outside. Thanks so much.
Stand up.